it helps now and then to step back and take a long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God or Spirit's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes the church's mission. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something, and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way. We are prophets of a future not our own. Those words were written by Bishop Ken Utener in November 1979 at a memorial for Archbishop Oscar Romero. This week, Republican speechwriter turned columnist Michael Gerson wrote in the Washington Post, "The struggle for racial equality is the defining American struggle. Much of our history has been spent dealing with the moral contradiction of America's founding, how a bold experiment in liberty could also be a prison for millions of enslaved people. That hypocrisy and its ramifications have been our scandal, our burden, our sin. And yet," Gerson writes, "the United States is distinguished because our history, with all of its precedents of pain, has a direction, a flow in favor of human dignity. Now, modern presidents have mixed records on civil rights and voting rights, but all accepted the principle, or at least the pretense, that the United States is a country of growing inclusion. Until now. We know what lies beneath the current president's toxic nostalgia for a country before the days of diversity. The shocking discrepancy between how immigrants are treated according to their race. The assertion that good people would carry torches and chant racist epithets into a southern city. His promise to protect the suburban lifestyle dream against low-income housing, and on and on. Once again, Gerson says, "The goal here is not just to cultivate partisan hostilities. It is to feed race hatred." This election is crucial in the fight against fascism, against further outbreak of this pandemic, truly against death and subjugation. The stakes have never been higher in my lifetime. Our Congressman John Lewis, who we heard, understood how much hangs in the balance of this moment. He told us, "Though I might not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring." Now it is your turn. It is your turn to cultivate a generation inspired by radical inclusion. That must be the trajectory of our democracy and of our lives. There is no greater gift to this world than the life you live. May your life be one of integrity. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe our life is our message, and our actions are our living theology. We are co-creating a world not just for each of us, but for all of us. Traditionally, this is a time of year when people honor their own ancestors, those who came before them. I always appreciate that Election Day falls so close to Halloween and to that ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, of summer's end and winter's beginning, the time when the veil is thin that divides the seen from the unseen, the living from the dead. This is the season when we feel the ancestors close around us, when our beloved dead return to us in dreams and visitations, so we may call upon their wisdom, their discipline of courage, and ask ourselves, what kind of ancestor do we want to become? How to be a good ancestor? I have a college friend who, after 20 years of intense therapy and spiritual work, she recently took to Facebook for a very public announcement. She looked into the camera and shared with her 980 Facebook friends that sometime in her early 20s, she realized her father was also her abuser. He had sexually abused her a number of times as a child. Doing further family research, which took her decades, she learned he had also been abused. Now, these were secrets kept in her family, and while the perpetrators were men, many of these secrets were kept and nurtured by women who felt responsible for holding the family narrative together, skilled at the benefit of the doubt, at smoothing over wrinkles and erasing memories. Now, my friend is also Facebook friends with everyone in her family, her aunts, her uncles, her cousins, sisters, her mother and father. They were all watching along with me, just a random, long-lost college friend. The most chilling part of her 15-minute video is the moment when she looks directly into the camera and says with a smile, "I am here to say the abuse and the secrecy stops with me." She is being a good ancestor. She is securing a different future for her family's story. Now she knows in the short term she will be blamed for causing pain as the truth is shared. And she also knows she is not the cause of that pain. She is changing the narrative, knowing the abuser will at first be treated as a victim. What she is doing for her family is unspeakably loving. She is taking responsibility for her family's future and caring for future generations. This kind of love is self-sacrificing. Her position in her family is now at risk, tentative, though she is loving them and herself and their future powerfully. Now, our country, though we love it and claim it, also has a history of abuse and secrecy. A generational woundedness that continues as long as we harbor toxic nostalgia for America's past. As long as the cycle of abuse and secrecy continues, we will continue to be America's enablers, smoothing over the wrinkles of subjugation and slavery, portraying abusers as victims and overdogs as underdogs. The writer Rebecca Solnit points out, the Me Too movement was not the first time women in America spoke up about being abused across communities and institutions, across fields of study and vocations. No, it was the first time the rest of America listened. And the Black Lives Matter movement, it's not the first time Black people have spoken up about the horrific treatment and abuse by police, but it is the first time most of America responded with anything other than disbelief and argument. Instead, Black women organized to name the abuse, and much of America shouted into the skies and airwaves a simple, life-giving message: Black lives matter. This is the good news of our time. This is also why the tension is so high. Because, like my friend, we are doing the very terrifying work of disrupting the abusive narrative of this country, one that 4 years ago so many Americans voted to maintain, to smooth over, pitting family member against family member in the process. And I am sorry to say, but in this American family system, we are currently now being traumatized, isolated, and gaslit by our abuser-in-chief. Now, in the pagan and Mexican traditions, as the veil between the living and the dead is thinned, we are entering that time of year that calls upon us to look to the shadow side of ourselves, to lean into our shadow side and to work with it. This is also the work of our nation as well. There is no moving forward without speaking the truth of our nation's origin, history of abuse, and working with it. Understanding multi-generational trauma, this is part of the work, as is never silencing someone's story. Believing women and Black people and Indigenous people, Latinx people, when they tell you they have survived abuse and suffering at the hands of our police, or ICE, or housing boards, or educational institutions, or our prison system. Taking their stories and saying with a clear voice, the cycle of abuse stops with me. You are the prophet of a future not your own. You can change the narrative. When I think of the ancestors of this moment, I think of Toni Morrison, of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and John Lewis, and the way his life changed UUCA youth Sophia Hook's life forever. Our elders become our ancestors to remind us to be free. The writer and activist Brittany Cunningham joins me in asking the questions. So what kind of ancestors will we be? Daily, the sum of our future ancestry is being totaled. Will we choose mere words? Or, as Lewis's compatriot and fellow hero, the Reverend C.T. Vivian, reminds us, will it be in the action that we find out who we are? They are with us, the ancestors, as we fill out our ballots, as we make calls to get out the vote, as we wait in long lines. Every voice that was ever silenced is crying out now. Every soul who once marched for the right to vote, every spirit that chafed at restraints, every visionary who dreamed of freedom is with us now. May we be worthy of their sacred work. May we be worthy of the hope of future Americans. May we be the ones who stopped fascism in its tracks. May we be prophets of a future not our own.